Go ahead.
I apologize for those technical difficulties. Everyone can hear me okay? Good enough? Yeah, I got a thumbs up. Okay. So again, thank you for coming to this October 14th meeting of the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee meeting. Today's meeting is open to the public. Citizens may comment on agendized items only. At this time, applicants may also comment on their applications. Please state your name for the record. Comments are limited to 3 minutes to ensure all citizens have sufficient time to speak. If you would like to speak, go ahead and raise your hand and I'll call on you. And for those applicants, we're actually going to wait just past the public comments to go ahead and we'll call on you individually. I'm going to take a roll call. Do we have Megan Goodrich? No. Ken Huang? No. Pamela Estes? Larry Munns?
Here.
Margaret Livermore?
Here.
Do we have enough for a quorum? Do we notice? Cece, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Excellent. So I just want to confirm no public comment received. I can't imagine nothing. Nothing. Okay. We're going to go on to introductions. So my name is Brian Stuckey. I'm City Council and Chair of the LTAC Committee. I am here with David Goldman, our Finance Director, Blaine Oborn, our City Administrator, and Chaz Webster, our Finance and Performance Analyst, also our LTAC representative from the city. So as far as introductions, this is kind of going to be your time if you're an applicant to kind of give a little bit about your project. Please limit it to 3 minutes. I'm going to kind of call just in the order that I see people on my screen. It looks like Cynthia Mason. Do you want to start by introducing you and yourself and what your project is and what's about?
You bet. Thank you, Brian. My name is Cynthia Mason, and this afternoon I'm representing our application for the Oak Harbor Music Festival. That's just celebrated its 10th year. I don't have anything very specific to share with you, but I'm respecting the process, and I'm here in hopes that if you have any questions for me that I'll be able to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Margaret with Main Street, I know you're applicant as well. Did you want to talk briefly about your project in this time?
Yeah, sorry I'm not visual. I can't get my laptop to bring you guys up. Our application this year is for year-round marketing of the historic downtown, including signage and video of downtown and just all around marketing, which is necessary in order to support our businesses, our small businesses that are downtown. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Larry Munns, I think one of these applications is yours as well. Did you want to speak briefly to it?
Yes, I am. Ordinarily, our Wildcat Sailing coach would speak to present the package. However, if you can see that, he's on his way to San Diego as we speak with these 4 girls who are representing the Northwest in the Girls National Championship in San Diego. This is the Oak Harbor Wildcat Sailing team, and those pennies that they are wearing that says Oak Harbor, right, bold letters on front, those were purchased with LTAC funds from last year, and we're doing a similar thing for this year. Our teams and kids get out all over the West Coast, and we think they're walking marketing for the city of Oak Harbor. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Wendy Horn, do you have an application?
Yep, actually, I am sitting in for Jared with Fizz Events. Normally he would be here, but unfortunately he was not available. So I'm representing the Whidbey Island Marathon. And I think most of you all are aware that the city puts on that event every year for the last many, many years. So this is our annual application. If anybody has questions, I will be available.
Thank you. Jay from North Whidbey Parks and Rec.
Hi. I no longer have the control to, there we go. We are installing a slide here at the John Van Der Zijt Memorial Pool as a way to work with our local hotels to create promotions for families to come in from out of town. I know, looking at the tourism data that's coming in, we know that a lot of families are doing rural staycations, staying in their own states. And so looking at a program that could help bring people into town. I know that when I was, every time I search for a vacation, I look for a hotel with a pool and for my kids. And so I know we have a lot of hotels here without pools because when I moved here, there wasn't a lot of options when we were trying to stay in a hotel for the first couple months. So I thought it would be a good way that we could help some of the local hotels add to their amenities list, because we also have a hot tub and sauna, and then we would have the slide for children. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe Maggie with the Oak Harbor Chamber of Commerce.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me here today and for allowing us to be here and to explain a little bit about our projects. I am proposing for the Oak Harbor Chamber of Commerce a promotion and marketing campaign that's called a One of a Kind Oak Harbor marketing campaign, which takes the chamber a little bit out of the box with some non-traditional advertising. So in the past, we have done some shuttle wraps that go down the I-5 corridor to the airport. I want to continue that. I also want to add some Spotify ads and get some really targeted demographics to get that 50 plus mile range into Oak Harbor. And I also am proposing a promotional campaign to do some Facebook, Instagram ads and really target that demographic that we're looking at. In terms of radio and audio ads and streaming ads, there's some packages that I am looking at for Seattle radio stations and beyond, and I gave some of those breakouts in terms of areas and demographics. But I'm looking at really targeting that specific demographic to come to Oak Harbor and really just targeting them through the media that they use, whether it's Spotify, Facebook, social, all social media, and then doing some traditional advertising with the Cascade Loop, which in my time here, realized we get hundreds of leads from people who look at that travel guide and want to visit Whidbey. So I put together that promotional campaign through visuals and still working on some of those visuals, but hopefully that will bring in some new tourism and some new families into the area. Thank you again for having me.
Excellent. Thank you. And I just want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. I know Steve Squabby was on earlier, but I don't see him on here. Did you want to talk briefly about those two grants, or do we have someone else from the city talking about the grant applications?
Wendy, were you going to cover the other grant too? Or I can pinch hit it, or is Sandra on? Sandra plays.
Sandra didn't join. She was going to. I can briefly mention that the city put in for two other grants. One is to fund 2 EV electric vehicle charging stations for the downtown area, because the ones that we have don't work anymore and they can't be upgraded. And then the other one was for some new wayfinding signs, also, to get people to the downtown area.
Excellent. Thank you. We're going to move on to a little bit of discussion. We're going to review the process and review the grading sheet criteria and scoring. For those that are applicants, you're welcome to remain on the line here, because after that, we're going to briefly review the applicants. And if anyone has any questions, if you're on here, that would be great. So please feel free to stand by. I'm going to turn it over to Chaz for a presentation on the process.
Thank you, Councilman Stuckey. I'm going to attempt to share my screen here, so hopefully I can grab the right one. Okay, so everybody should see that. All right, so I'm going to fast forward here. Here's our agenda, and Councilman Stuckey briefly went over that for us. And so the review of the process, we received approval from council for this 2023 grant funding level, and it was set at $500,000. Also on September 6th, it started our 45-day requirement before council could take action. Now, of that 500,000, 480 was made available for new grants, as 20,000 is paid to Island County Joint Tourism. It's a perpetual agreement. So we opened the grant period on September 26th, and we closed that grant period on the 12th. And after we closed that grant period, I had emailed the grant packages out to each of the members along with a scoring sheet for both single and multi-year. So today we are meeting, and this will be to evaluate just the start of the process of evaluating the grant applications, and then we can also talk about the scoring sheet. The scoring sheets will be due back to me and Dave by the 20th, so next week, Thursday, so I can compile those scores into one workbook, which we'll work from at our next meeting. And that next meeting will take place on October 21st. LTAC will deliberate and award funding for recommendation to council. And LTAC, those LTAC recommendations will be presented to council on November 1st, and then that would satisfy the 45-day time requirement. So currently, on your single year applications, there are 8 items to score from. And this will also match up with the grant applications. They have the same numbered criteria under which the applicant has to respond. And there is a 100-point max value. As well with the multi-year, the only difference is there are 6 categories, and they are assigned a max value, all totaling to 100. And again, the application for the multi-year also has the same numbered criteria under which the applicant must respond. So evaluation considerations to keep in mind, all applications must include estimates of how much funding the activity will result in, increases to the number of people staying overnight, traveling 50 miles or more, or coming from another state or country to be compliant with the statutory requirements. So this information is also reported to the state each year, which is another exhibit to the contract that these applicants after the event have to fill out and also send back to me. There is no requirement that priority for funding be given to applicants expected to generate the largest number of tourists, and lodging tax revenue may still be awarded to recipients who provide services that indirectly increase tourism. The law is silent on the frequency of awards. You will find on the scoring sheet I provided you last year if an applicant had requested funds last year. That's also on your scoring sheet, just for your information. And then again, after the event, all the recipients are to return what we call the Exhibit B to the contract, and it's information that I use to report activity to the state's JLARC committee. So use of revenues, when you are reviewing, the applicants are looking for funding. They must generally be used for tourism promotion, acquisition of tourism-related facilities, or operation of tourism-related facilities, including tourism marketing, marketing and operations of special events and festivals designed to attract tourists, operations and capital expenditure of tourism-related facilities owned or operated by a municipality or a public facilities district, including repayment of general obligation bonds or revenue bonds for eligible capital projects, or operations of tourism-related facilities owned or operated by nonprofit organizations, but not capital expenditures. So the guiding principle is that these facilities should be used by tourists. So here we have listed our single-year applications that were received. So I'll just go through those. Oak Harbor Chamber of Commerce, for marketing, it's a single year, $65,000 for the 23 grant year. Oak Harbor Music Festival for $48,000. North Whidbey Parks and Rec District, $37,384.42. City of Oak Harbor Public Works, $30,000. And that's for the electrifying downtown corridor. We have City of Oak Harbor for Whidbey Island Marathon at $30,000. Oak Harbor Rotary Club for the windmill rebuild, $25,000. Oak Harbor Main Street for historic downtown marketing, $16,250. City of Oak Harbor Public Works downtown promotion and marketing signage, $14,700. Island County Master Gardener for the Whidbey Gardening Workshop, $4,700. Whidbey Island Gem Club for their 57th Sweetheart of Gems show for $32.95. And our Wildcat Sailing, Oak Harbor Youth Sailing, $1,200. So we've got a total there of $275, $529. And we do have some multi-year applications received here. Chamber of Commerce for operations, $130,000. That is for 1 year, but multi-year is going to be a 3-year contract. So that is $130,000 per year. PBY Memorial Foundation for the Naval Museum, $33,600 for the year, but for the next 3 years. McKinsey Foundation for Hydros for Heroes, also multi for $21,000 per year for 3 years. And Whidbey Health Foundation for Tour de Whidbey for $5,000 per year for 3 years. Your scoring sheets for the single and multi-year were emailed as mentioned, and please have those back to us by next Thursday. And then I'm going to compile those scores on one worksheet. And then our next meeting will be next Friday. We're going to deliberate, and then we're going to recommend those awards to City Council for approval. And staff will present that for city approval on November 1st. And that's all I have as far as that, and I will send that back over to Councilman Stuckey.
So Chaz, is this the time when we want to talk about if we're going to kind of award all or nothing, or if we're going to do graded, or would that be more appropriate next meeting?
I think our next meeting is when we decide, is when you decide how you're going to, what options you're going to
Okay,
use.
so we don't need to worry about that right now.
No.
Okay.
Today is question and answers and any questions to the applicants who are on the meeting.
Okay. So we will go ahead and go through the grants briefly. This is the time for anyone who's on the LTAC committee to kind of discuss it, because I understand we're going to get those grading sheets over to you, and there really won't be more discussion amongst the members
Yeah.
other than right now.
Right, and if there are any questions during that period of time, feel free to reach out to me.
Sure, and if there's any applicant that wants to speak, and we're talking about your grant, you just go ahead and let us know. Steve Schwabe, I see you kind of joined in late, so I'll call on you when we get to that grant, okay?
Okay.
Greater Oak Harbor,
I have a question for Chaz, if you can take a moment.
Go ahead.
Please. I tried to raise my hand, but I'm not sure how that works. So on your multi-year grants, you list the 4 applicants. Now, you mentioned before this particular list that in addition to these 4 applicants, there is the commitment for the $20,000 a year for the Joint Tourism Board. Should that actually be listed here, even though because it's coming out of the LTAC funds?
Well, I should probably put it there for you. It is a perpetual agreement, so out of the 500,000, only 480,000 is what we are using towards these new grants. But I could definitely add that to when we meet again next Friday, so that it's clear.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but it is non-discretionary. I mean, the LTAC isn't going to be deciding on that 20,000. It is already
Right.
set. But I can definitely add it so that the monetary value is there for you and it's clear.
is that your only question there, Larry?
Yes.
Okay. So starting with the first grant we're looking at is the Greater Oak Harbor Chamber of Commerce Visitor Center Operations Support. And I understand as we going through this, those on the LTAC committee, you may have just glanced at these briefly. I know I looked at them this morning. So, I mean, we'll have to do a bigger deep dive before we turn in our scoring sheets. Is there any initial thoughts or any questions for Maggie while we have her on the phone regarding this multi-year operations grant? It looks like it's one we have awarded in the past. But is there any thoughts amongst the members or any questions for Maggie?
Oh,
Yeah, I don't see any hands raised. Maggie, anything else you want to add that you didn't cover in your intro regarding this particular multi-year grant?
I just wanted to say with, yeah, I didn't cover that in the introduction. The visitor center is the first stop for anyone here when they're coming to Oak Harbor. We're a perfect location right on the 20. We get multiple requests coming in even before visitors come into Oak Harbor. And we just revamped our letter that goes out to potential leads and potential tourists that want to come to the island, and we made it a little more personal. We added some of the year-round events to really boost attendance and tourism during the big signature events that we have here on the island. And also in the letter, we included some pictures of those events and just made it a little more personable to really invite people to come into the visitor center and take advantage of all of the literature and things that we have here. All of our staff is completely knowledgeable with everything we do at Oak Harbor. We train everyone to know all of the ins and outs. The plan for this upcoming year is to have a little bit more interaction in terms of menus, other events going around town. Some of the staff will also be focusing on being out and about and using the WOW wagon to build some more exposure as well. Is there any questions?
Doesn't appear to be any, so thank you, Megan. I know you have another application in here, I believe, that we'll get to as well. Next up, we have the Pacific Northwest Naval Museum. It looks like they are requesting funds for marketing and operations, as they have requested in the past. Any thoughts or comments, concerns from any of the members of the LTAC committee? And again, you can have an open discussion if there's anything that jumps to your mind. Okay. Seeing none, we have application, and these are multi-year for Hydros for Heroes. I think we're probably all familiar with this organization, and they're looking for money for advertising, as they have in the past. I don't believe there's any representative of Hydros on here. But is there any questions, thoughts, concerns? No? Okay. Next, we have Tour de Whidbey. And this was, Chaz, if you could give a little more context, this came in as a multi-year and a single year. Can you elaborate briefly on that?
Yes, Heather with Whidbey Health submitted a multi-year, and this is the first time they submitted their multi-year for $5,000. So at the time, she was my very first applicant, and I said, you know, maybe you should also submit your single year, but in discussion, it's going to be if the LTAC committee decides if a multi-year isn't something they want to award, but would award a single year, they could, and without having to use a separate application. So she did submit a multi-year for $5,000 for each year, and then a single year just for $5,000, just in case she didn't get the multi-year. But she didn't necessarily need to do that.
So it is one or the other?
It's one or the other.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it looks like we have awarded to this organization in the past as well.
Yes.
Okay. Seeing no questions, we're going to go back over to the Great Oak Harbor Chamber of Commerce one-of-a-kind Oak Harbor promotion and marketing campaign. Maggie, any thoughts on this particular grant specific to this?
One thing I didn't mention in my intro to this is we really want to take it back to just the close-knit, old-fashioned feel of coming to a town that really just takes you away from the everyday life, the hustle and bustle. And we have, through our visitor center, we have gained visitor center data. So with having that data, we are going to be able to use that to target some of our demographics that are in our surrounding areas and surrounding states. Like one of our biggest one is California. And so some of our ads are going to be targeting those potential tourists there. But really, we just want to build more on an experience of coming to Oak Harbor and also focus on shoulder season by doing some promotional giveaways online and just getting the word out to some of our surrounding states. And that's all going to be done through streaming ads and, like I mentioned before, through targeted marketing.
Okay. Thank you. I think you just have the two applications. So any questions from anyone on LTAC as far as questions for chamber? It looks like we have city administrator.
Yeah, just a little comment here to the chamber director here. I think when we did the 3-year grant, we had people that had capital or had positions in it, and that's part of the reason why we did this. And my question to you is, does this have positions in it, this marketing component? I know you certainly have positions in the operation, but my question.
Right. Yeah, I didn't include any capital projects in this one. Right now, we are still talking about that. We haven't really discussed some of the things. I mean, I think if you'll know, I've only been in this position about a little less than 2 months. So I wanted to continue with what the focus has been the last few years in terms of capital projects. I didn't want to put it in this time around.
So my
Because
question.
I wanted to stick it towards them.
Yeah, I want to make sure you understand. My question is, are you funding positions in this marketing campaign?
For the 3-year, is that what you mean?
For the 1 year, you're
For
65.
the 1 year, no,
Okay,
the 1
okay.
year, single year is all marketing.
Okay.
Any other questions for Maggie? Oh, moving right along. In that case, North Whidbey Parks and Rec with their slide proposal. This is obviously something we have not funded before because we don't have a slide there. So, Jay, anything you want to add that maybe you didn't in your introduction?
We did do some preliminary research from other places who had put in the slide in their pools, and so the numbers that we included about how many people would come, we were hearing between 12 and 25 people a week they were seeing from outside of their zip code, and so we did go conservative with that number. But I just wanted to let you know that we did ask other people who had installed pools into their pools, how that had increased their patrons from outside their zip code. So it was something that we did look at, which is why we included those numbers. The cool part about our pool that'll be a little bit different than your typical pool. Most pools will slide. When you slide right into the water. Ours will be a drop. And so it's about a 4-foot drop into the water. So it gives a little bit of exhilaration, even though it's a smaller type pool. But that's about all I have for you.
Is it a straight, and it's probably in your application, so I may be just asking you to repeat yourself. Is it a straight down slide or is it one of those swirly slides?
It's a straight slide, but it's like I was above the camera. It goes down like this and then drops.
Okay, and I.
So when you come out of the bottom of the slide, you'll drop 4 feet into the water about.
Okay, and I appreciate you addressing on how it brings outside people in. Of course, with the LTAC funds, the idea is for tourism, not necessarily directed to the locals. And so that was one of my concerns, which you address, is getting people outside of our zip code to come to this area. It's great that everyone benefits, but obviously that's the goal of the LTAC money, is to get people from out of area. So I appreciate you addressing that.
Yeah, and I know every time, because we've done a lot of traveling across the country and we do it with friends, we're especially in groups like that we travel with. As a group, we're always looking for, a place to take our kids that they can all enjoy something together. And so when you look at the county and you see all the Airbnbs and the VVROs where they're hosting families coming into the island, this also gives them an amenity to enjoy that a lot of our Airbnbs and VRBOs don't offer.
Sure. Thank you. Questions from anyone? Margaret, go ahead.
I just want to say you skipped the music festival.
You're right, I did. I'll go back to that. Any questions regarding this, though? Go once, going twice, no. No, I didn't have a different order. I think I just turned to my book too much. So, going back, Oak Harbor Music Festival. I think this is an event that we're all familiar with. Cynthia, anything you want to touch on that you didn't on your introduction? It looks like this is kind of, you applied for this multiple years and it's been awarded multiple years. So anything you want to add?
Well, I probably should start with a big thank you to the city and the staff and to the LTAC for the consideration and the awards we have gotten in the past. I think as time goes on, with the city not owning an event outside of Marathon, I think this partnership is pretty solid. And I think that in the way that our event has grown, and how much the community takes ownership and pride in it, as much as our city staff does. And I guess I should note just the cost of our ask went up for the first time in a few years, but that has a direct reflection on the cost of what it's taking us to operate the event, from insurance to fencing. And that's not outside of Larry's ability to negotiate music. It's all the hard costs that it takes to run it. For example, the insurance on our liquor license that's required of the state went from under $3,000 year over year to nearly $7,000. And actually, it could even have been more. I don't have a number in front of me. I'm sorry, that's kind of an estimate. But so we're a very responsible organization to our donors. We do, and you can see that in our budget and in our annual report, we do have a reserve fund should the event get canceled due to weather or any other thing at the last minute. We try to have enough in reserves fund to pay those hard costs. This ask is going to be basically for what it costs to operate that, and a little bit for Larry. The bigger the acts that are in town, the more people will come and visit. And we're just really proud of what we've done. We've also, as you can see in the details as you read through the application, we added a community partnership with Windermere this year and had concerts in the park titled Sounds of Summer every Wednesday night that were very successful for the first year out. And I spoke with Kristen Stavros yesterday, and they're excited about the possibility of continuing that partnership in 2023. And we also launched a instrument program, the Quarter Note Fund, in fulfilling another niche in our own strategic plan in trying to reach to the youth. We do touch on the teens with our Teen Talent Showcase, but this will award or help provide instruments to students that are younger that might not have the ability to obtain an instrument. So we awarded the school district $10,000 launching that out this year. So we had a lot to celebrate. We're very proud of the videos that we put out every year. We increased our videos on the state ferries, not just our local state ferries, but they went statewide this year. And it would be the second year in a row we had our billboards on I-5 and one on I-20. So I think the outreach to those visitors that have the option to come see beautiful Whidbey Island is out there. So we just keep enticing them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Cynthia? All right, seeing none, we're going to electrifying the downtown quarter, City of Oak Harbor. You want to touch on it?
Yeah, I'll go first, and Wendy, you can add to it here. I'll pinch in a little bit here. Certainly, the city's been known to look at infrastructure issues that are quasi-related to tourism, and the LTAC has been very supportive on that. We've done tables and other things, and so this is one where we don't have electrical vehicles, unfortunately, so we need to do a replacement here, something the staff has been looking at grant funding and thought there was enough of a correlation here to ask this grant. And this is a one-time grant application to help us to bring back the electrification. And Wendy, you're welcome to add to my comments here.
Yeah, so I think just what Blaine said, we have 2 charging stations in downtown that don't work. more and more people are buying electric vehicles. You know, Washington State wants to be the #1 state. We're actually the #2 state with electric vehicles, and we want to keep up as a city, so that if somebody is driving on the island and they want to stop and check out the downtown, they have somewhere to plug in. So that's the basis behind it.
Do we have any statistics on how much the prior charging stations were used?
So generally speaking, anecdotal. Unfortunately, they were used primarily by business owners in the downtown area, from what I understand. But we don't have any hard data.
Margaret, I know that you're kind of down in that area. Did you see them used when they were working with some frequency, or?
Sometimes I look down at the parking lot, but I don't very often. A lot of times, I've not seen many cars use them, just, but I don't look all the time, so I can't give you 100% thing. I know there's cars parked there that aren't plugged in at times, but that's obviously because they don't work, I guess, right? So I can't give you any real data.
Okay, thank you. Blaine, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I guess it's a good thing we have event people here, and I guess the question I have to event people, do you get questions, people asking about electric vehicle charging and whether it's accessible in the downtown during those events? And so I think I'd like to hear that answer, but I think also answering a little bit of that question, as people get more and more electric vehicles, it will be more vital. But I guess I'd ask it up if some of the event sponsors, like the music festival and stuff, if they get questions for it, that would kind of help us connect it to tourism.
We have not to date gotten any, and I the ones that I always notice are the ones there at China City up the top of the hill there, and those are always the first ones that you would get coming into town. Other than that, Blaine, I guess I've just not educated myself on where they're at, although I do know, because of my involvement with the Island County Tourism with Sherry Wyatt, that the tourism board promotes that, you can go all the way around the Cascade Loop now with charging stations. So that's what I know about charging stations right now. Sorry, I couldn't be more help.
Thank you.
I know I haven't often seen the ones in front of Safeway being used, but I have gotten emails from people asking about charging stations, and I mean, there's by 2030, I believe it's supposed to be all electric vehicles sold. So even if they're not being used often now, there may be a time when we will need more infrastructure to support that. Questions? Any other questions regarding that? I didn't know, Larry, were you trying to raise your hand?
Yeah, since I don't want to divert this into an EV discussion, but listening from the federal level, if whatever you hear, if it may or may not be valid, they're talking, 500,000 units across the country to expedite the whole electrification of the country. Are we trying to put our toe underneath the level here before the other flow from potentially federal or state funds are coming from another avenue other than tourism?
Could you speak to that?
I guess the question I had, we'll keep on looking. We'll take the 30,000 here and keep on looking. This will help do it, but I think certainly we need a lot more than what we're asking for here long term. And Wendy, you can probably speak to that in our goals. Certainly this is one of many sources we're looking for EV costs.
Yeah, there's definitely some opportunities out there that we are looking at. Puget Sound Energy has a program that they're launching in the next 2 years or so, which may be an avenue that we'll pursue. But right now, it's trickling down from the feds.
Margaret?
I had one question. I haven't read the grants yet, but if you install new charging stations, people will have to pay for that, right? It's not going to be a freebie.
So the plan was not to charge them right now, but that may change over time. The ones that they installed back in 2014, they were free for people.
So what is it the cost, what is the cost to the city for somebody charging their car? I mean, do we all have to pay for them to charge their cars then? I'm being a naysayer here, sorry.
No, that's fine. No, that's absolutely fine. I don't have that number though, unfortunately, how much it cost per year for the electricity. And unfortunately, Sandra Place, who is our person, expert, our EV expert, she was not able to attend. So I can find out and have that for you. I'll get it to Chaz and she can get it back out to you.
Thank you.
That would be helpful. Also, if we could find out the charging stations in front of Safeway, if they have a fee and what that fee is, that would also probably be helpful as well. So
Sure, I can find that out as well.
appreciate it. Any other questions regarding the EV stations before we move on to the other Oak Harbor grant? No? So another event that's quite common, Whidbey Island Marathon. Do you want to speak to that briefly?
Yeah, this is one I'm very familiar with. I guess, I think most people know the history here. It was a private event, and Brian, I talked to you about how the city gets involved in economic development and events that the market can't take for. So we really need a subsidy on it. It's really vital to continue that. We've usually done 15,000 in the past, and so we're running at a deficit. So we're upping the number here, and we're hoping the LTAC committee will give a more generous amount this time to help us get out of a growing deficit. And if we do continue in that deficit, then I think at some point we're going to have to talk to the council and see whether we do it. Since it doesn't make money, I don't think there's any private event, and I don't know that there's any other benevolent organization that wants to take it on. But certainly, clearly, the data that goes to the council and the data Jared, our sponsor who runs the event for us, or promotion, does an excellent job of it. It does obviously fill up heads and beds, and so as part of in the past where we didn't get into the county distribution there, but we did get into the Anacortes, trying to get money there, and we'll look at the county. And so we know we do bring in overnight stays for the whole area, and that's one of the reasons why we applied for additional funding with the Anacortes LTAC. So we'll continue to do that, but hopefully we'll get the support here, that extra amount needed to keep this viable for the city to continue to operate and promote the Whidbey Island with the Whidbey Island Marathon. And Wendy, and once again, you're welcome to kind of comment additionally on this item.
Oh, I think you said it. I think you said it all. Thanks.
So this 30,000, would that make it then, if we got the 30,000 based on how many registrations we get, would then it not be at a deficit? Would that be like a break-even estimate?
Well, we're trying to make up for a deficit to
Okay.
come out of, so we haven't made, I think our finance director, David, you know this off, I think it's 2014, we haven't broke even on it. The goal is to try to,
2015.
yeah.
And
we
it
were-
looks like for the past few years, we've been adding about 15,000 to the deficit. So since we were getting 15,000 in the past, if we go to 30,000, the thought is we won't have to add to the deficit. And if we get some money from Anacortes, we can actually work on reducing the deficit.
So if this money's not awarded, does that deficit number come out of the general budget? Or where does that money come from?
Yeah, it's part of the general fund when we do our financial reporting, so it just gets absorbed.
It's kind of a loan. We're trying to pay it back
get it.
by coming out of it, and we're trying to break even, but certainly the city can't, general fund can't continue to subsidize it. So, and it certainly tourism, and it certainly obviously brings in, fills up all the hotels in the area. And we'll continue to do that. If we can get multiple funding here, we might be able to drop it back down to 15,000, but costs are going up. Fortunately, our promotion person, we've kept that flat and he's been good working with us, so we haven't increased the amount there. And then hopefully we'll come back with events, and it's certainly a great, we got involved into multiple marathons through the area, and so now it's an international event, so it's part of a pool, and you get a discount for doing that. Obviously, this one was very impacted by COVID. We did move it to September. And then we moved it back to the traditional off season here, so hitting in April. Rain's usually an issue, but it does hit the shoulder seasons there when the hotels are not full, and it gives a weekend that obviously the people that we draw, a huge amount of those people fly all over the country and run marathons, and so you usually get 1 or 2 nights. So certainly this is a really high event that clearly brings in overnight stays.
Okay, any questions regarding the marathon from any members of LTAC? Seeing none. Windmill rebuild project. I think Steve Schwabe, your name is on this one. You want to give an intro on what it's for?
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Brian. Good to see you, Blaine and Chaz. So the Windjammer Park was, as you know, renovated, and we had a windmill in that park for forever, back when it was City Park, and then the windmill went away, and it was not replaced. And so there's been a hue and cry and a lot of interest in replacing that windmill. And we're not just talking about replacing it. We got the plans for the original windmill, but now we're talking about actually making it more robust so that we can use it not just for storage, which I think is what the old one was used for, but you could actually have events in the windmill. And they'll be on the bottom floor, will be a display area, a little bit about the heritage from the Netherlands and Holland, and some plaques for donations from donators, et cetera. And so it's going to be bigger and better, and something that everyone's interested in seeing happening. It's not an event, it's a structure, it's a building structure. And on that line, we started, the project has started already in May, and pre-construction was in June, and the construction itself will start in February of 23, and with a projected end date sometime in the summer of 23. So that's what we want to do. Want to inspire and people of the heritage of the, and events like Holland Happening could use that facility as part of the event itself. So we're interested in getting some help from the city and the county fund-wise, because it's a lot of money. We're not asking for it in near amount. I think the total cost of the rebuild is estimated to be about $650,000. But we have a lot of stuff being donated. Painter's Alley is donating all the paint, for example. So there's a lot of donations coming in, and so whatever we can get will be helpful.
Thanks, Steve. Any questions regarding this project or this grant application? And this, once completed, is being donated to the city of Oak Harbor, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. Going to historic downtown marketing. Margaret, I think this is you.
Yes, that's me. Yes, this year we are applying for money to help with our marketing plan. In the past, we have applied for a small amount of money for our walking map that we do downtown. Sorry, I'm echoing. I don't know why. I don't know why it's echoing.
Are you logged in twice? I see ED Main Street on here as well.
Well, yeah, let me see if I can get rid of it. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, I got
so,
rid of the other one. I was on 2 computers because I couldn't get a visual. But anyhow, so in the past we've applied for just a walking map, money to cover our walking map that lists all the businesses downtown, shows their location, and it shows the parks and the sculptures and everything down here. But we wanted to help with more with the advertising and promotion of our small businesses downtown. A lot of them are still struggling due to either lack of staffing, like the restaurants, or just trying to come back from a bad economic situation, and it's only going to get worse. So we really want to help out our little businesses because that's what our mission is for Main Street. And it doesn't have, it has a little bit of capital expense. We want to come up with a kiosk and some new signage up like on Barrington showing that the historic downtown is to the south. And so people, if they go down Barrington, know where to find us. But yeah, we're just trying to promote our small businesses, and that's what this grant's all about. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Margaret? Seeing none, going back to the city of Oak Harbor with downtown promotion and marketing signage.
No, signage is certainly something that is for people who are new to the area or driving through the area. So certainly it's related to and intended for tourists. And so there has been projects in the past that have been paid with LTAC funds for marketing, and the city is submitting this one. And Wendy, you're welcome to give a little bit more detail on this.
I don't know if all of you have ever noticed the wayfinding signs that are up now. I'm relatively new to the area, and I literally had to look for them because they're so faded. So this kind of goes hand in hand what Margaret is trying to do as well, get people down to the historic downtown area. The chamber, we ARPA funds paid for a couple of new signs, wayfinding signs that were recommended by the chamber. So those went up, I think, a couple weeks ago. They look great. We'd like to do something similar with the signs that are down in the downtown area. They were originally purchased in 2010, so they're well past their prime. And with the funding that we're asking for, it will replace all of the ones that are down there.
So a question or two regarding this. When you say well past their prime, what is the average lifespan of a sign? I'm just curious.
So 7 years.
7 years. And
Yep, they had a, yeah.
And I know, seeing some comments around, there was some thought about the fact that the signs that were just recently replaced kind of having a different logo. Kind of, I mean, because that's a different logo than the Oak Harbor logo. So are we kind of using different things? And what's Margaret? You might have an answer here.
The logo that's on is the historic downtown logo that the city approved a number of years ago. And since these signs that we had worked with the city to have put up are specifically to direct people to historic downtown. The signs, I believe, Wendy, you're talking about are the ones with the sails and everything, which is the typical logo of downtown, which are totally faded. You can't even see blue or yellow sails anymore, and you can hardly read the signs. So I think that grant is hugely important.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
Any other questions? Larry, I can't tell if you're trying to unmute there, or?
Yeah,
Okay,
I was
go
trying to unmute, sorry. This is sort of in line, I think, Brian, with what you said, is I'm always interested in events, or not necessarily events, but projects which appear to be overlapping. Wendy, I know you mentioned that you're working hand in hand with downtown, but it would be nice, I mean, are we gonna end up with two signs for the same thing on the same post because we have two different projects with different money that are signage the same way? How closely is hand to hand, or are they really, we're not getting duplicate anything?
So this application came also from Sandra Place in Public Works. So I'm thinking that all of these signs are going to be the ones that the city originally put up. Honestly, I can't speak to how closely we're working with the historic downtown because I haven't been involved in the project. So Margaret can answer that.
I'll just say their signs are entirely different than what I have put in my grant. My grant is for signage from Barrington telling that people to come down to start downtown at the corner of Dock Street, and maybe also on Bayshore directing them up. The other signs are just the ones that are already existing. I think that they're refurbishing, from what I understand.
Yeah, so Margaret, you know they're there and you're not going to duplicate it, and certainly we'll work with you and make sure that we do not duplicate it.
Correct,
Yeah. So-
correct.
And so my point is, I love compatibility, and it should certainly be that the city is speaking with one voice, not two or three different voices all pointing in different directions. And I know that's way easier to say than to, actually put into the process.
Okay.
Just a comment,
Margaret, yeah.
my signage is like what you would see in other cities on posts that say, shopping this way or park this way. It's just to direct people specifically to historic downtown, and also a kiosk for downtown. It doesn't, these two grants don't overlap in the signage area. They're specifically different projects.
And I have a picture of the signs that I'm talking about. If you want me, I can
Sure.
share my screen.
And I heard refurbish. Are these being refurbished, or are these for new signs? Like,
Well, there'll be new signs, but
Okay.
we're basically putting them in the same.
do you have a picture you
area,
can
I
pull
believe.
up easily, or?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Let me see if Chaz
gotta
will
stop
stop sharing
sharing.
hers. I can.
Oh, there it is.
Let me get to that. Remote control. Oh, why don't I see it? Maybe it's just right here. Okay.
There we go. Okay. Can you all see that?
Yeah.
Yep.
So those are the signs that are around town. They're very hard to read.
Yeah.
And I think we'll probably be discussing, changing them up, so maybe they reflect more along the lines of what we just installed.
So-
Don't quote me on that, I'm just talking out of turn.
So they are going to have the Oak Harbor logo, not the downtown logo, such as the signs that were just placed.
I'm gonna defer to Blaine on that one.
It depends on what they are. If you look at it, there's different locations we're promoting. So we'll look at the appropriateness. If it's specific to downtown, then we'll do downtown. But city is a trademark for a larger area. So when we're doing multiple events, I think we'll kind of go with our logo there and our colors there. I think, and I'll certainly work with our communications IT manager and work with Main Street and work with other people in making sure we have the consistency here and we kind of have the logo that promotes and talk about being one city. Certainly it is vital to having old ugly signs don't really look to the level of the city, and I think one of the grants that's not in here is our whole entrance signs, and that's on another one, so hopefully there's some interest in championing that. This is more city and public works related, so we took this on. But that's certainly another signage that's unfortunately not here into the city that needs to be revamped too.
I will say they look clean though. The birds haven't gotten a hold of them. So
I have so many questions. Am I allowed to ask a question?
sure, yeah, go ahead.
Well, and I missed the top of the meeting, so I'm recognizing that we have a lot of LTAC members or committee members also as grant writers this year. So I guess I also need to know who really is on the LTAC committee. But my main question about the signs is, how did Public Works pay for them originally? And is this just a really fancy way of trying to get into these LTAC dollars because Public Works' budget is really tight? I mean, just a very simple question from a citizen out here, that's all. And the applicant.
Are you comfortable answering
Yeah, I'll
that?
take a shot at it. It's not in our regular expense because these are really extra signs. And they're purely put in by tourism. So my guess is I would probably say there's a 90% chance they were before. I know the entrance signs were purely tourism related. So usually we're only putting in these types of signs when we have tourist areas that really want us to do wayfaring. And wayfaring is certainly a component of tourism, helping people, because you do have people that sometimes see a sign, well, I'm going to go to this place instead of by looking at the sign. And if you're somebody local, you're going to probably not just walk by it and not even realize the sign's there. But if you're somebody new to the community, you're going to be much more cognizant of the signs. And I think certainly the quality of the sign is very reflective of it. But I tell you, if we don't get LTAC dollars, I'm certainly not going to try to squeeze it in our regular general fund, and we will remove the signs.
Fair enough. And the city, of course, can make applications, and it's up to the committee to determine the merits of the application. And then to your other question, on this particular meeting, myself, Margaret, Cece, and Larry are on the committee. And as I understand, and Chaz, you can dip in here as well, it's not unusual for those on the committee to also have applications. This is not something that's rare to this particular go-around, correct?
Not rare at all, because 3 of those members are recipients of the LTAC funds, and that's how this committee is built. So we have 3 members that collect the tax, so that's normally our hotel businesses, and then 3 members that are recipients of the funds. So it
And
could
Chaz,
be
that's stipulated by state law.
state law, state law.
Yeah, the state
But it's
law
also in
really
our municipal
wants
code.
us to be inherently, wants us to be conflict, because it really wants people that are involved in both sides, the
Yeah.
collection side and the recipient side. And it kind of follows the rule that everybody but one person is kind of conflicted, and that rule that everybody's conflicted, so then it really isn't conflicted.
It's an interesting dynamic compared to other boards and committees. So, but
Yes.
thanks for the question.
But that does happen in planning, has that rule. If all the commissioners are conflicted, then they just go ahead and just do it. So this is kind of that similar kind of rule that's kind of backwards and a little bit backwards than what you see. But certainly everybody's fully aware of it. So I think on the transparency, and certainly I would encourage when we have openings here, if since the music festival is a major player here, that maybe one of the spots that are from some of the other ones can transition to their organization. And you do have somebody that's multiple hats that's on this representing another organization, but certainly involved in your organization too. So, I mean, the whole idea is to bring, and not to be competing with each other necessarily, but to really look at the viability of the downtown, of the city, and bring in tourism and increase our overnight stays, so we have even more money to promote
Right.
with the LTAC dollars.
I appreciate it. I guess I understand LTAC fairly well. I'm kind of a geek that way, but I just didn't know who the collectors were. I didn't know who our panel of collectors were.
Let me pull that up for you. I have it right here. Our collectors, we have Megan.
Thanks.
Yep, Megan Goodrich, Ken Wang, Pamela Estes are the collectors. So that would be Candlewood Suites, Oak Harbor Inn, and Best Western. Sure.
And to point out the obvious from years past, and Cynthia, you will remember this because you've been involved on this probably as long as I have, is in all years in the past, we are trying to whittle down the recipients because we don't have enough money to provide everything that everyone has asked for. The obvious here, if you look at the final numbers, is that there's enough money to fund everyone's request in this particular year. Not that that's what we're going to do. Again, I suspect it's still up to the committee to decide whether those individual items are appropriate. But, you know, we could close the doors right now and just say, yeah, do it. And we would fall within the budgetary restrictions. But I don't want to get ahead of ourselves from a committee point. That's your cue, Brian.
I got you. Yes, we had an unusually large amount of funds available this time, which may very well not happen in the future due to the fact that we're have the ability to award more than we're taking in for this particular year. Going back to the signs, though, and then we have 2 more grants. Just making sure there's no other questions regarding signs and signage. Nope. I don't see anyone here from the Island County Master Gardeners Foundation, but it looks like they are asking for a grant for their Whidbey gardening workshop. And it looks like this is a grant they have requested in the past, although they are asking for a little more than they have requested in the past. Any questions or thoughts regarding this?
If I can input a
Please.
personal suggestion on this one, in all years in the past, well, other than the people who are listening, of course, and that's you, Cynthia, probably, but I think the Whidbey Island Gardeners do a tremendous job of, it's not a big event, but they've got everything nailed, exactly where the money's going, exactly who's coming, exactly how many people are spending in hotels, exactly how it fits into the shoulder season in March. And I have always applauded them for their submission. And I'm not a member of the Master Gardeners, but I think they're great. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that input. Next application we have is the 57th Sweetheart of Gems Show. It looks like this is a new application regarding marketing and operations of the Gem Show. I don't see anyone representing that organization here. Is there any questions, thoughts, comments? Okay. Seeing none, going to our last application, which is Wildcat Sailing. And I do believe we have someone on here with us who might know a little bit about that. Larry, you want to briefly touch on it again?
Again, just to reiterate what I said at the beginning, we're a very small request. And again, our concept of tourism is to get our name spread. We compete in from the Canadian border north to San Diego to the south. And the more people that know about Oak Harbor, we think, the better. We've included in our packet one page of one event. We do about 4 or 5 regattas here locally. And this particular one was in March, and we brought in like 200 people that were staying in hotels. I may have had that number wrong. I'd have to actually look at the thing. But when people come, they have to stay someplace for a 2-day event. And we think we're appropriate. And it certainly is helpful for the high school kids.
Thank you. Any questions for Larry or any discussion regarding this? Maggie.
Hi, Larry. So my daughter sailed with Wildcat Sailing in 2018, and she also went to San Diego for that national. And I always looked at the Oak Harbor vests. And if this is successful for you, I've always thought that Whidbey Island should be on that, because I think people don't know where Oak Harbor is, and when you add the words Whidbey Island, it just engages more people. But just a suggestion. Yeah.
Thank you, Maggie. Any other thoughts on that? Seeing none, we have our next meeting scheduled for next Friday. Do we have a time? 2? Does 2 o'clock work for those on the LTAC committee? Same time? Not seeing any objections?
Yeah, that is good. I'll be traveling back from from Wenatchee, but I hope to be back in time.
Sure. Larry, did you have something there?
No, that I have a time zone conversion to deal with too, but I think that would work great. It won't impinge on my morning on the beach, so that's fine.
So you're doing some tourism somewhere else. Okay, then. So yeah, 2 o'clock. We do need to get in those scoring sheets. I would say I'm sure it'd be much appreciated if we didn't wait till the very last minute to get in those scoring sheets. I mean,
Yeah.
by Wednesday would be preferred.
That'd be lovely.
Could you email out anyone who hasn't done it by Thursday morning to make sure we get all those sheets
Absolutely.
in there? Okay. Anything else for the good of the order before we close this meeting out? No? Well, thank you everyone for coming. We'll adjourn the meeting at 3:30. Appreciate your time and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.